Hi there. Welcome to Dr. Tu Academy. This is Java tutorial for beginners. Lesson number 7. The topic of this lesson is class and objects. Java programming is an object-oriented programming. It mimics our real world. Our real world consists of objects, and all the objects can be classified as different classes. So in our Java programming, everything is a class and objects. So what is class? Class is a product blueprint. So we build a object based on the class definition. And the objects are the actual products. So in our Java programming, everything is a class and object. So how do we use class and object? First, we define a class. Class contains member variables and member methods. We also have a class constructors. Constructors is used to create an object. So every time when we create an object based on the class constructors is called. How to use an object? First, we have to declare an object from a class. Then we create an object. We call that instantiation. Also, we said we instantiating a class object. Then we initialize member variables of the objects. Most of the time, we do that through the constructors. Then we can access object methods. Here's the class definition code. We define a class called user. So we have the username. This is the class constructor. It's very similar to the regular method, right? And we define, this is also class constructors. The class constructors looks very similar to regular methods, but the method name must be the same as the class name. This is the member method. We set the username. This is the method of getUsername. Here's the steps to create objects. Step 1, declaration. We use class name to declare 3 objects. Class name is user. Object name is user1, user2, user3. The step 2 is instantiation. Here we declare the 3 variables, object variables, but we must allocate memory to create a new object, the real object. So we use the new keyword, and the user is the constructor. So this statement, we created the actual object, allocate the memory, and put the actual object into the variable user1. Step 3, initialization. We need to initialize the data, the member variables inside the object user1. We know the user1 has the username, right? So we call the method setUsername parentheses Jeff parentheses. We can also do those declaration, instantiation, and the initialization at one step. Here's how we can do that. We use a new keyword, but we use the constructor with the parameters. So we pass the Jeff into the constructor, and the user one created an object with the username initialized to Jeff already. Same as here, we create a second object, user3. We assign the value Harry into the username. So here we did all these 3 steps, 1, 2, 3 into one step. There are 2 types of variables. One is called instance variables. Another one is called class variables. The variables we have learned in user class are instance variables. Instance variables are bound to object. They are initialized during the instantiation. And the class variables are bound to class. They are shared by multiple objects. And they are initialized in static block or in static method. If we see a static keyword in the variable declaration, then we know this variable is a class variable. If we don't see the static keyword in declaration, then it is the regular instance variable. Now let's double click eclipse.exe file to start the Eclipse. Project name, lesson 07. Click on next. Finish. Module name, com.doctor2 academy Java tutorial lesson 07. Click on create. Right click on lesson 07, new project, class, package name, com.doctor2 academy .java tutorial lesson 07. Class name, code tester. Click on finish. Now let's write the main method. Public static void main string angular bracket aux parentheses. Now let's create another class. Right click, new, click on class. Let's create a class called user. Click on finish. This is the class user. Let's create a member variable, private string username. Let's create a class constructor. So name empty string. Now let's create another constructor with parameters. We pass a parameter called name. So we assign the name to the member variable username. Now let's create a public member method to set the username. String name. Assign name to member variable username. Let's write another public method to get the username. This one doesn't have parameter. Just return the member variable username. So this is how we define a class. This is a public class. These are the keywords. This is the class name. We call that user. If you click here, you will see the phrases. It's circled by the red line. First, we declare a private member variable called username. It's a string data type. Then we declare two constructors, public user and the public user with the string name parameter. The constructor looks very similar to the method, but the name is the same as the class name. Then we define a method, set username. This method takes in a string called name and assign the name to the member variable username. We define another method called getUsername. this method doesn't have a parameter. All it does just return the member variable username. So this method has the string defined here as the return data type. Now we have defined the class user. Let's take a look how to call this class in our main method. We declare an object, user, lowercase. Here we use class user to define an object also called a user, but it's lowercase. Now we initialize this object by using the new keyword. Now let's set username of this object. Set username. We pass string Jeff. Now let's declare another variable called my name. Now let's check the username of the user object. My name equals user.get username. Now let's put a breakpoint here. Click on debug button. Click on step over. Here we created a user object. The username is empty. Now we are going to set the member variable username as Jeff. Now this is Jeff. Now let's get the username and assign the value to my name. My name is Jeff, right? Now let's also take a look how to step into the method and the constructor. Click on debug button. We're not going to click on the step over. Now we are going to click on this step into. Let's click on the step into. You see it stopped at the first constructor. Right. We assign the empty string to username. step over. Now we click on step into. This should not get us into the username definition. Press F5 or click this step into. There. Now we are in the set username method. So this line will assign the value of name to username. And the value is Jeff, right? Now username is Jeff. This is the current object. So if we want to see the member variables, expand this. This is the current object. So its member variable username is assigned as Jeff. Step over. Step over. Now my name is Jeff. Let's create another object. User2. This time we are going to pass username to the constructor. User2 equals new user Harry. Since we assign Harry into the username variable, we don't need to call the method setUsername. So we can just call my name equals user2 dot. You see the drop down shows the get username. So you just press enter. It will fill that line automatically. Now let's run the debugger to see the flow. The first one we step into. Click on step into. This is in the constructor user without no parameters. Now we're going to set username to Jeff. Let's click on step into. This is the method set username. And the parameter name, if you put your mouse here, you will see the name is Jeff. Or you can look at it here. The name is Jeff. Now we assign the name Jeff to username, member variable. Click on this. This is the current object. We see its member variable username is assigned Jeff. So we get the username variable of the user object. Now we assign that value to my name. my name. Now the string my name is Jeff. If you want to look at the user object, click here. You see the value username is Jeff, right? Now we have declared a second object called user2, and this line will create a new object and assign the member variable to Harry and pass the new object to variable user2. Let's step into it. Calls the constructor with the parameter name. So this constructor assigns the name to username. We know put the mouse here. You see the name is Harry, right? The name is Harry. And then assign the value to username. So the username is Harry. You can also look at here. The object username is Harry. And that the parameter name is Harry. Click on Step Over. Now we get the object user2. Now let's click on Step Into. This is a method, get username. The username is Harry, right? You can also expand this. You can see the username is Harry. I'll put your mouse here. It will pop up. The value of username is Harry. Click on Step Over. Now it returns the value of Harry and assign that to my name. My name is Harry. This is how we use class user to create object and call users method. But if we try to access the object's private member, say, can I do this? My name equals to username? No, right? If you press enter, it will automatically get you to the method, get the username. You just can't access private member variables. You see it's not listed here, right? But if we change that, if we change this to public, then we can access that member variable directly. See, this is a string username, right? Let's click on debugger. Step over. So my name is Jeff. Let's do step over. Get the username. My name is Harry. Now let's execute this line. We access the username directly. If you put your mouse over the user 2, the pop-up will show the username is Harry. Step over. Assign Harry to my name. So if we set member variable to public, we can access the public member variables. But it is highly recommended we always set member variables to private. It is highly recommended we always set member variables to private. And access member variables only through public method. Get the username. In OO programming, we always set our member variables to private and only use public method to access those private member variables. This is called data encapsulation. And we'll have another lesson to talk about the data encapsulation. Now let's do a quick recap of what we just learned today. Object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm which mimics our real world of classes and objects. We can think of a class as a product blueprint, and objects or actual products we build based on the blueprint. Class contains member variables and methods which defines the objects, properties, and the behavior. Here's the steps to use class and objects. We first declare an object from a class. Then we instantiate class objects. Then we initialize its member variables. And finally, we can access object methods. We will learn more about the methods in our next lesson. We will learn what is the method definition, how to define a method, and how to call a method. That's all for this lesson. I'll see you next time. Bye.